Check in. How's everybody doing? Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, everybody's doing well. Can you guys hear me all right? If you can, please give me a thumbs up. I just wanted to make sure. I was doing some last minute corrections because last week I noticed that I was getting some doubling of the sound. You guys didn't even tell me. It looked like it was going through my little mixer here. The guitar was going through the mixer, but at the same time was going through the USB out. So I was getting the sound from the mixer and the USB at the same time, which didn't sound good at all. But nobody mentioned anything. So if the sound is okay, if the levels are all right. All right. Thank you, Jack. Good morning. Happy Sunday. How's everybody doing this today? I hope everybody's doing okay. Heavy week this week, as you guys know. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Before I even start getting into anything, I'm going through the messages here. And I heard something that I don't like. Mark says, have to leave early today. My dad had a stroke, spent all the yesterday in the hospital, headed back late this morning. Total bummer. Hey, Mark, I hope your dad's doing okay, dude. Really scary stuff. I hope the prognosis is good, is a positive thing. Keep us posted, and spend time with your dad, of course. I hope everything turns out well for him. Give him our best, all right? I hope everything turns out good. On a side note, Mark says he got his Les Paul back with new pickups and wiring harness. Due to my dad's stroke, I haven't been able to really try it though. No kidding. Well, hopefully you'll be able to try it and serenade your dad once he's back home and in tip-top shape. I'm keeping my fingers crossed everything goes smooth for you guys. Yeah, it's, I don't know, man. It's been a very crazy week. Don't you think? I don't want to start off, on a bad note, but I mean, of course, we need to talk about Jeff Beck, right? I mean, the elephant in the room. Jeff has left the building. It's sad to hear that. It definitely touched me, and I did a video on that, of my own little tribute to Jeff, because he definitely, he definitely put so much out there in terms of music and great stuff for musicians that I thought it was appropriate to at least, give put something out in the universe that's positive for Jeff. And no, Mark, Mark, you're not bringing us down, man. It's these things happen, right? It's life. But hopefully, today there's so many things that can be done in terms of just getting you patched up and out the door and back home in no time. So hopefully that will be the case with your dad. And tell your dad to take it easy. Tell him to avoid the stress and just take it easy. So Beavis, yeah. So Ken Block, Jeff, Lisa Marie, and there was even somebody else. Oh yes, Mr. Backman. Thankfully, it wasn't Randy Backman. It was his brother. Not that it makes it any better. Robbie Backman, who was the drummer. Also passed away. And if you're not Canadian, maybe you're not following BTO since they haven't really put out anything new in a long time. But Robbie was the heartbeat of the band, and it's funny because, well, not funny. It's kind of sad actually, but Randy also put out a little announcement for his brother. He said that another sad departure, the pounding beat behind BTO. My little brother Robbie has joined mom Mum. That's a Canadian way. You know you're Canadian when you say mum with a U. Dad and brother. Gary on the other side. Maybe Jeff needs a drummer. He was an integral cog in our rock and roll machine, and we rocked the world together. It's funny that Randy does have a little bit of a sense of humor when he says, maybe Jeff needed a drummer, and that's why he was called to fill in. Yeah, it's crazy. It's too much at once. There's too much stuff happening at once. It was a shock for me too, Jamel. I wasn't expecting it. The first announcement that I saw, I thought it was a hoax. You know how it is. There's always these fake announcements going on, clickbait going on the internet, and I thought that's what I was looking at, because he was like one of the last persons I would have thought, one of the last people that I would have thought would have passed away so quickly, because we were seeing him regularly. We were seeing him with on TV, on TV, on YouTube. He was playing shows. He was having fun playing with his buddies. So everything looked like was, status quo. Everything looked good. But Jean-Pierre, do I know who Jeff Beck's idol was? Well, good question. I know that he started, I think one of the people that he looked up to was Les Paul. I don't know if he had another idol. He may have. Davis says some of my first songs I learned on guitar were BTO. Yeah, BTO is a staple of rock, That's like actually, if I played in the right key, would be better. And I have a deluxe reverb patch going on right now, so it's not rocky enough for this, but yeah, it's so Randy obviously lost his brother. Lisa Marie passed away this week also, and I wasn't expecting her to pass away either. It's like, who's next? I mean, what do? We play the lotto here, the rock and roll. If I was to put a bet, I would have always put my money on Keith Richards and lost every time, because it's funny, every time somebody does pass away, you see that meme, of Keith Richards looking at the newspaper, and the writing underneath says, "Hey Mick, you wouldn't believe who I outlived today." It's not funny, but it's kind of funny, because Keith is always there. It's going to be a sad day when Keith passes away. So Jean-Pierre riddled me who Jeff Beck's idol was, and he says Cliff Gallup, Gene Vincent's guitar player. I didn't know that. Jean-Pierre is my resident rock and roll encyclopedia. He's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to rock and roll. Ask him about any. I don't know if are you keeping up with that, Jean-Pierre? You used to riddle me the time of certain songs. Jean-Pierre was like Rain Man. We would say like, we would play this game. How long is this song, right? So I would mention a song and he would tell me how long the song was, to the second, which is crazy. I don't know if he still does that. We can maybe test him. So Jack, no, this is not the Harley Benton Gold Top. This is my Edwards Gold Top that I'm playing with the P90s. It's a little noisy. You can probably still hear a bit of the hum underneath in the background. Playing with the neck pickup. I don't play this guitar enough. Fat Philosopher, when Jimmy Page passes away, I'm going to be wearing black probably for a year. Just because it's going to be hard. That one's going to be hard. I don't even want to think about that. Eddie Van Halen hit me pretty hard. Jeff Beck, because he was a staple, he was always there. He was always in the background. You know, like Jeff was never really a person that wanted to be in the limelight all that much. He was very, I think he was happy just playing his music, doing his thing, playing with his hot rods, and just, staying away from all of the craziness that comes with fame. And that's why I kind of respected him because of that. So Jean-Pierre says, I still remember the Beatles song length, but I do not record the time anymore. So if I test you on one, can we test Jean-Pierre on a Beatles song? Somebody give me a Beatles song and we'll see if Jean-Pierre can give us the time on that without using Google, right? Jean-Pierre, you can't cheat. I want to see if you still have it. This guitar, is the P90s Edwards, made in Japan. I top wrapped the strings, as you can see here, just to see if it would make a difference. It feels a little different. You can hear the noise. Like, look, if I hold it like this, the noise is pretty much gone. If I do this, it comes back, right? P90s. That's what you got to deal with. Yeah, Kurt Cobain, definitely. I think a lot of people felt that one, especially the younger people. Wayne, no worries. You don't have to apologize for being late. It's all good. So Keith mentioned, he says, here we have A Day in the Life, number 9, Long Winding Road, Hard Day's Night. So Jean-Pierre says 5 minutes and 3 seconds. Is that for A Day in the Life? Let me check that out. Let me do my diligence here. A Day in the Life. In the life length. I don't know if it's going to pop up. 5 minutes, 35 seconds, says here. Somebody's slipping. I don't know which one you're answering now, Jean-Pierre, because it's there's a couple of them here that have gone by. So if it's A Day in the Life, according to Google, it says it's 5 minutes, 35 seconds. If it's, let's see here. Number 9. Let's see. Number 9 length. Eight minutes and 22 seconds. That's number 9. Yeah, that's it. You know, it's like they had so many recordings of the same song that. So Jean-Pierre's claiming. What did he? It depends on if it's the original. Yeah, there's so many different versions on the vinyl original. So you're referring to the vinyl original. Okay, I see what you mean. Johnny Franklin Torres, he says this program is dedicated to Jeff Beck in a loving memory. Well, I mean, we can definitely dedicate the show to Jeff. Jeff definitely deserves it. Good guy all around. He had his temper. You know, people were very much used to Jeff being a little bit, shall I say, difficult at times. But you know, he stood his ground, which is nice. At times, he didn't get along with other musicians. I mean, he was actually kicked out of the Yardbirds. If my information is correct, he was actually kicked out. And I think when he did his acceptance speech at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he mentioned that. You know, he kind of jokingly mentioned that he was kicked out. You know. But he loved to play with the hot rods. I think he had a really vast collection of old Ford hot rods. He loved to play around and tinker with them. I think he had one of his favorites was a 1932 Ford Deuce Coupe replica. And he oftentimes just loved to tinker. Eddie said he bought a guitar this week. Eddie, what did you buy? And Eddie, yeah, people still do listen to the Beatles. At least I do. I would love to see what Jeff Beck's final guitar collection is. How many guitars he actually has in his collection. Does anybody know? Does anybody have that information at your fingertips? It must be a vast collection, even though he mostly played Stratocasters and Telecasters. He probably has like a hanger full of guitars. He claims that his original influence, one of his first influence, was Les Paul when he heard a song on the radio. And I guess that got him into playing guitar. Gave him the bug. Do you guys remember the first... what started you guys playing guitar? What triggered your guitar obsession, guitar love? I think everybody has a pivotal moment where, you know, there's something that happens that ended up triggering the lifelong passion for music. Gene says he saw him with the Yardbirds at my roller arena. Really? What year was that, Gene? Yardbirds. So that, you know, we're talking early, very early. By the way, I have my snore cam on today, guys, if you guys are interested in checking out the pooch cam. There she is, snoring away. I wish I could sleep that well. I swear this dog probably sleeps like 18 hours a day. So I figured I'd share that with you guys in case you were wondering where all the snoring was coming from. And for some of you guys that say I never play the guitar clean, I'm playing through the clean patch today. Which is kind of a very nice patch. It's a little deluxe reverb patch. I do have a little bit of drive dialed in. I had to change my headphones today. I don't know why. I was getting some noise in the background of the old headphones. This is the second set that I go through. This thing has some kind of weird thing, probably a busted driver. You know, duct tape on the headphones. I broke another set of the same. I had two of these, and the other ones collapsed on me too. So I'm wearing these Bose headphones today, which are not necessarily good headphones for like a recording or studio or anything like that, but they're the ones that work. So yeah, it's getting grim over here. Dan says parents bought me an SG in 1980 after going to a Rolling Stones concert. Still have it, been playing ever since. So that was your pivotal point, Dan? That's what got you into playing music? Very cool. That's an excellent gift, by the way. I didn't say hi to anybody this morning. I kind of jumped right in. So let me just take a moment and do the romper room thing. Hi, Jack. Hi, John. Mark. We already said hi to Mark. Randy. Greetings. Gene. Nice to see you. Gene says he was making coffee back then. Johnny Franklin. Fat Philosopher. And Fat Philosopher said, you know, I said I wasn't going to buy any guitars until March. Well, I bought a Yamaha acoustic electric today. So, Fat Philosopher in the corner. Come on, go in the corner. You broke your promise. Was that your New Year's resolution, by the way? I hope not. It's me, Don P. Good morning. Gene says, I bought a Telecaster kit for winter build. Might have to wait till spring with all this rain. Well, Gene, I did the same. You saw the kit that I talked about. And maybe we can build it together, you know. Virtually on I can start on my side, you can start on your side, and we can build it together. I started putting the parts aside for that build, so I haven't started anything yet, guys. But I've started accumulating the parts that I'm going to need, so I'll start probably working on it and filming a few videos along the way and posting them for you guys if you guys want to see how I do it. It doesn't mean it's the only way to do it, it's just the way I do it, and maybe it can help some of you guys. So John says good morning. JP, Randy, Ed, Munch, good morning. Mike, good morning to you. Gary, Paul, another family reunion. Yeah, it's a good way of it's a good term for it. I like that. Christian, saw your last video on YouTube. My respect. That message was for Charles 75N. And John says another sad week. So yeah, a lot of people are here today. I'm glad to see all the familiar faces. If you guys don't know, and if you guys are new, and I have to mention this because I'm always afraid that there's some people lurking in the background that haven't realized this, but you need to subscribe to chat. So if you're lurking in the background and you would like to chat and join in on the conversation, I highly recommend that you do. You have to hit the subscribe button and you can still chat, right? You can still, it takes about a minute or so, maybe a couple of minutes before the system allows you to chat. So if you haven't done that already, please do that. Otherwise, you'll be talking to yourself there. Man, my dog's really snoring loudly here today. Let's go back to the snore cam. Listen to this. You know, she sleeps with me in my bedroom. She has a little pillow set aside in my bedroom. So between her snoring, my snoring, and probably my wife snoring, it's a pretty noisy night. That's why I look so tired. Jean-Pierre wants to know what's the advantage of playing a guitar without a pick. I don't know if there's an advantage. It's just a different flavor, you know. Like if I just play with my fingers, it sounds a lot different than if I would do this, right? And of course, you can do the bass thing. You can slap. Whereas if you do the pick, it sounds different. It's just more of a, I guess, a direct connection with the instrument, as opposed to going through another medium, which is the pick, right? Not that picks are bad. Some people use both, and they do the picking, the hybrid picking, which is you have the pick, and you do both. I don't know how many of you guys play without a pick. I do a little bit of both. I wish I could sleep like that too, Jean. I'm gonna have to wake her and have to throw something at her. Just she's sleeping so soundly. I'm just gonna let her be. Good morning, Billy. Nice to see you. You do feel the tone more when you're playing with your fingers. I think so too. But it's not always as easy to play fast with your finger, you know? I usually use my thumb as my pick. That's true. When you don't play with a pick, you can't drop your pick. That's absolutely true. Unless you get one of those finger picks, the ones that wrap around your thumb. They're harder to drop. Vox says the first time I got the urge to play was after seeing Luther Perkins play. Let me ask you this, you guys. When you see somebody playing, let's say you go to a show and you see like an amazing guitarist playing, does it encourage you to play more, to practice more? Or do you feel discouraged that you would never actually reach that level of perfectionism? Early on, I got to see guys like Aldi Meola in a small club here called Club Soda, which I don't even know if it still exists, probably not. A very small club. There was maybe a couple of hundred people in there that evening. So I got to see him up close and personal. An amazing guitarist. And the guys that I went with were all musicians. And I think I'm going to say like 98% of the people that were there that evening were probably guitarists or other kind of musicians. And I was with another fellow, a good friend of mine, who also was a guitarist at the time. And I think he still plays guitar now. Pretty good guitarist. And he was like, I'm going to say he was more discouraged than anything after seeing Aldi Meola. He was like, he was in amazement because they were so tight. Such great, just riffs and playing technique and everything. So he kind of came out of there and he was kind of, I would say, a little bit disappointed or discouraged. I saw Aldi Meola at least twice. Then I also saw guys like Tommy Emmanuel. I saw him a couple of times. Another monster on guitar. The things that this guy can do on acoustic guitar is mind-bending. It's just crazy. But I wasn't discouraged. I wasn't discouraged. I know I will never be able to reach that kind of playing technique in a long shot. I would have to live another 5 lifetimes probably to even get close. But I did enjoy the playing, and I really enjoyed watching him play. And but some people don't react that way. Dan says it encourages more to play when I go to a concert. I tend to create my own tone so it doesn't discourage me. Yeah, me too. When I see somebody that plays so well, it actually encourages me to pick up the guitar. Not that I'm going to be trying to get to that level, because I don't have the time to get to that point, to be honest with you. But it definitely encourages me to play. Ricardo, good morning. Tony Van Halen. I wish, Ricardo. I wish. Here's a word of inspiration that I wanted to share with you guys, because we were talking about Jeff Beck and his passing. And Steve Stevens, everybody knows Steve, right? The guitarist or the old guitarist of Billy Idol. Still plays with him from time to time. He put a little blurb out, and he says, with the passing of Jeff Beck, folks, we are asking, will there be a new generation to birth a new guitar hero? I have a suggestion. Put down your phone, forget about posting, and join a band. Book yourselves into the shittiest bars possible, play those holes for years and years, then see where you're at. Beck joined the Rumbles, a Corydon band in 1963 for a short period as lead guitarist, playing Gene Vincent and Buddy Holly songs. That's how it's done. No shortcuts. Same as Eddie Van Halen, who played every backyard party, school, and eventually clubs to hone his craft. By the time I was 17, I was playing 3 nights a week in nightclubs. I would not have traded that training for the world. So that is, some words of advice from a pro. Steve Stevens has been around the world. He's done his thing. He's a very accomplished guitarist himself. And he's absolutely right. There's no shortcuts. If you want to get good, you got to practice. And the more you play, the better you're going to get. And that's how it's done. It's not, you see these, and it always makes me laugh when I see these things on YouTube where you see these guys that say, have these pitches for some kind of software program or website or something. I crack the code, I can show you how to become an amazing guitarist in a matter of weeks, so on and so forth. It's all BS, guys. There's only one way to do it: slow and steady. You just put in the time, put in your 20,000 hours. That's how long it takes to become an expert at anything, apparently, and you'll get there. The good news is you will get there. There's no big reason why you can't do it. It's just a question of dedication and time. If any of us are not good, including myself, I don't think I'm an extraordinary guitar player. I'm passable at times. That's about it. It's very simple. It's a question of time. Playing in a band will make you a better player. Absolutely, Davis. Playing in a band, recording yourself, listening to how you sound when you're playing in a band, that's what you need to do. To be critical, but not discouraging. Just listen to yourself with a critical ear. Listen to yourself while you're playing back your music and ask yourself, is it entertaining to listen to what I'm playing? Would somebody be captivated by what I'm playing, or would they just simply be like, look at me for a few seconds and walk away? That's what it is. It's a question of you're an entertainer. You need to entertain. And music is not just about, being able to play. It's also putting on a show, right? And being able to connect with the crowd. That's the hard part. Fat Philosopher says the only way is the Tony way. It's not the only way, but it's one of the ways. Wayne says 20,000 hours. I thought 10 would do it. 10 per day, maybe. What's 20,000 hours in terms of days? How many days is that? Can somebody do the quick math and tell me? I'm gonna ask Siri to tell me. 20,000 hours divided by days is how many days? Let's say here we go. I think somebody else Googled this because it came up pretty fast. It says 20,000 hours is 833.33333 days. That's not too bad. It's not bad. 833 days? I thought it would be worse. So you're looking at basically 2.5 years. 2.5 years is doable, guys. Come on. Of course, that's if you're practicing 24 hours a day, though, huh? Yeah, maybe it's going to be a little longer than that if you're not practicing. If you're practicing half hour a day, it's going to be a lot longer. Sorry, guys. I forgot to factor that in. I was never that good in math. Stage presence is huge. Okay, I'm gonna just here. I'm gonna nudge the pooch because she's really going to town, and you guys are probably annoyed, aren't you? Here, let me just see if I can wake her gently. Here, give me a sec. She's only gonna be awake for a split second, even if I wake her up. Hey, 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 hey. Let's see how long it's going to take for her to continue. She's not even going to stop snoring. She's just going to continue snoring. Anyways, guys, doesn't matter. Let her be. Let her be. Sleep is for the weak. If you stop sleeping, most of the time, the hours between, I'm going to say, 11:30 p.m. and 6 a.m., it's wasted time. Spend that time practicing, and you're going to be, think of it. Think of how much time you can get into it, practice time you can get in those hours. Dan says 2,500 8-hour days for me. I don't stay up more than 16 hours a day. Entertainer does what the audience wants. Artist makes the audience come to them. Not meant. What? Sorry, I went by too fast. Not many artists anymore. Yes, I agree. You're right, though. It's, well, you don't want to do what I mean, you do want to do what the audience wants, because that's why they're there. They want to see you do certain things. You know, if you're an artist like, Santana or somebody, and you don't play Oyo Como Va, there's going to be a few people leaving that show miffed, right? So you have to do what they want. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You have to make them understand your point of view and pull them in to what you're doing. Absolutely. Jeff says, that's just depressing. Reminds me of how long we spend in work. Yeah, the work scenario, don't get me started. You know, everybody's got to work to live. And if you're a musician, an artist, or somebody like that, I think you're constantly thinking about, it's always the yin and yang, right? You got to do the work to be able to afford the gear, but you'd rather be playing with the gear than doing the work. So what do you do in that scenario? Beavis says, nah, the dog ain't annoying. Gospel of Mark says, I love the dog. It's like listening to the beach. Yeah, kind of like the waves. All right. I'm glad she's not bothering anyone, because, I'm a dog person. I love dogs. You can use the dog snoring for effects on your next recording. Yeah, maybe I could name the song, instead of naming it Black Dog, I could name it like Snoring Dog or something. Sleeping Dog. I agree. It wouldn't be the same without her. Spend the time practicing and you get great abs. Paul says, I think you meant in instead of I, but in my worst year, I practice at least 1,000 hours. My goal is 4 hours minimum a day. Paul, that's amazing. Hats off to you, buddy. If you could spend 4 hours practicing, that would be great. And it's also the quality time, the way you practice, right? So we've had this discussion before, guys, and I wish I could listen to my own, my own advice, because there's practicing and there's noodling. A lot of us don't practice, we noodle, which means we play the stuff we already know. We don't practice trying to learn something new, stretching the brain. Like, practice should not necessarily be fun. And I'll take that with a grain of salt. Let me explain before you guys disagree with me on that one. What I mean is, practicing should be fun in the sense that once it's done, you would feel a sense of accomplishment. But while you're doing some practicing, you're learning something new. You're stretching the brain, you're stretching the muscles, you're trying to achieve something you can't do currently. It's like trying to do chin-ups. If you can only do 3 chin-ups today, you want to strive for 5. It's not fun trying to get to the 5th one. But once you get there, you're happy you did, right? And then it leads you to trying to get to the 6th and the 7th, right? So it's a chain. So basically, playing guitar or doing anything for that matter is the same thing. So you want to try and aim for that thing that you can't do and focus on that and try and get it. And the thing that I can say, and you guys could agree with me or disagree with me on this, but this is my word of advice for you guys, and it's truth for me at least, is that if you consecutively try and tackle a problem, usually sleeping on it and getting back to it the next day, maybe doing that for 2 or 3 days, the problem's gone. You usually end up memorizing that solo or getting that tricky lick under your fingers down pat, just resolving things. I think when you're sleeping, the brain does a lot of work when you're sleeping. It kind of processes all the stuff that you've been through that day and allows you to categorize and neatly package your thoughts and ideas. So when you come back to it the next day, somehow it seems simpler. It seems easier. That's the first challenge. The second challenge is then to remember all the stuff that you're learning, because what ends up happening is that throughout your lifetime, especially if you're an older musician, you learn a lot of stuff, and you can't possibly keep all that stuff here. So unless you're constantly practicing it, it's gonna disappear. It's gonna get less easy to play that kind of stuff. And you might forget the licks. You might forget how it goes. So practicing definitely keeps the tools sharp, and that's what you want to do. So if just a show of hands, put in a number. You know, how many hours do you practice per week? Well, as actually, forget about that. How many hours do you practice per day? Just give me and it could be like 30 minutes, could be an hour, could be 45, could be a couple of hours. Where are you at? Antoon says, hello, Tony. I'm about to buy a Martin MD acoustic guitar made in 2009. Do you know whether they were all made in the USA? I believe they are, yes. The Martin DM acoustic, I don't know if Martin ever made acoustic guitars anywhere else. I'm just gonna look it up here because I want to see. And that model is no longer made, by the way. And I'm pretty sure the DMs were all made in the US. I don't think Martin ever made guitars overseas. I could be wrong. I think they may have made some guitars in Mexico. Maybe they're still making them in Mexico now. Because right now the Martin guitars are being made in the United States and Mexico. They make their standard series and modern deluxe guitars in the famed Nazareth, Pennsylvania factory. The Martin Road series, X series, and Junior series are made in Navajo, Mexico. So they never made them overseas. All right, so let's see here. If you guys had any questions that I missed while I was on my rant here, just put it back in the chat, please. Because I know there's some people asking some gear-related questions, and I miss them sometimes, guys. I'm sorry. I know some of you guys contact me after the show and say, hey, you missed I had a question, you missed it. So I apologize. But just put it back in the chat. Alex 2112 says, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten home from work and wanted to play my guitar and left my amp on standby all night. LOL. I fell asleep and then had to go to work. I've done that a couple of times too. It keeps the room warm though. The tubes keep the room warm, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a more expensive electricity bill at the end. Beavis says, I'm done with locking tuners. Vintage style only from me from here out. You know, Beavis, I'd like to comment on that because people automatically think or like to gravitate towards these locking tuners. I'm with you. I don't think you really need locking tuners if you wind your strings properly. The disadvantage with locking tuners is that you got to cut the string right after the post. And then if you ever want to work on your guitar or just, for whatever reason, loosen the strings, maybe you want to clean your fretboard, you can't really put it back. It tends to snap after a while, and it just doesn't work, especially the low E string. So I find, having a little bit of a wind around your post helps. Don't look at these strings, by the way, because these are terribly wound strings. This one especially. The low E is really garbage the way it's done. I think I did it hastily. I don't know if you can see that here. The low E string, look at that. Can you see that? That's not how you want to do it. It's this one. It's not how you want to do it. But if you do it properly, don't do as I do as I say. You actually, I think, are better off with regular posts than locking posts. So some of you guys are practicing, which is nice. I see that Fat Philosopher practices for about an hour and a half. Peg City Pickups tries for about 30 minutes, an hour if he can. Cushman 2 hours. The Eagle and Pony Show 1 hour. Dan Smith 90 minutes a day at my desk at work. I tend to noodle daily as well. You know, that's another tip, right? If you're working at home, you're working remotely and you're mostly on Teams or whatever, it doesn't hurt to once in a while just pick up the guitar and do some finger exercises. You know how they say you're supposed to get up and stretch? That's true. You can't stay in front of the computer all day long. But just do like little exercises. Just like just little things like that. Just do that and get it on time with a metronome. Try and keep it clean, you know, stuff like that. Little things. It doesn't take much. Sometimes it's even like noodling while you're not even paying attention, because you could be watching TV, you can be picking up your guitar during a commercial, unplugged, and just doing your finger exercises, and it's like it adds up at the end of the day. You know what I mean? If you look at guys like you know, some of these musicians are practicing all the time. They always have a guitar in their hands. Jerry, yes, the headstock on the Edwards is the same as a Gibson. Can you see that? Edwards, but it's the same shape as a Gibson. That's what I like. That's one of the things that I like about it. Eddie says, my favorite tuners are the vintage style, poke it down, wrap it around. Yeah, like on the Strats. You know, they should all have that. You just put in the hole, wrap it around, you're good to go. Then you don't have these little sharp pieces like I have on this one sticking out, you know. I wanted to say something regarding cabinets, because you guys, first of all, well, before we get to that, have you guys taken the opportunity to answer the poll question? I had a poll question up. I put it up yesterday. A lot of you guys don't know where the poll question is. It's, if you go to my channel, you should be able to see it there. A lot of people have trouble navigating to it, but it's there. And I'm going to jump to the poll question here very quickly just to give you the results, because I like putting up polls just to be able to see, you know, what you guys like, what your preferences are, etc., etc. So the poll question was, in your opinion, what setup would be better? A higher gain amp without any pedals for drive, or a lower gain amp with pedals for drive? And the options were A, high gain only baby, right from the amp for pure tone, or give me lower gain and my choice of pedals. So those were the two choices. Now, if you guys didn't answer the poll, put it here. Put it in the chat and we'll discuss it a little bit here. But I'll give you the results of the poll. And overwhelmingly, 3-1, where 75% of you said, give me lower gain and my choice of pedals, as opposed to 25% that said high gain only from the amp, pure tone. So I tend to agree with the majority on this one. I tend to agree, and I've said it before, lower gain amps for me are more usable. Doesn't mean they're more fun to play necessarily, but they're more usable. And the reason for that is it's hard to clean up dirt, but it's easier to make something dirty when it's clean. Because what ends up happening is that you're eventually going to want a clean sound or a cleanish sound. And if you have a higher gain amp, very difficult to get that from a higher gain amp. Good morning, Ken. Ken says, good morning, everyone. Better late than never. Absolutely. Glad you can join us today. Presley says he's been liking the Wilkinson staggered tuners. 2 holes in each post allows you to choose the lower hole for better break angle on the high strings enough to not use string T's. I know what you're saying. Yeah, I like those better too, Presley. You know, Fender and a few other companies were making the double length posts where they had higher posts for the lower strings and then lower posts for the higher strings for the same reason, to kind of get a better break angle. But they didn't have more than one hole on those ones. And some of them are locking as well. I find the ones that you're referring to, Presley, are better. But I kind of like the staggered ones as well. Boomster Black says, I use clean tube Fender Deluxe and pedals to taste. Jeff says, I went for high gain. I find it easier to get a clean amp, to get a clean up from amp gain. I find it easier to get a clean up from amp gain. Okay. Orion Quest says, Bullseye Tony. Hey Landon, nice to see you, buddy. Guys, check out Landon's channel. Landon has a very entertaining YouTube channel as well. Beavis says it's called the Wilkinson Easy Lock. Yeah, that's what it is. Exactly. Easy Lock tuners with the 2 holes. Yeah, that's the one. John D says, I don't stress over tuners. Whatever the guitar comes with is fine with me. True. That's one way of looking at it. Make the best of what you got. Absolutely. I haven't changed all my tuners. I don't go bananas trying to change all my tuners. But if something eventually does break, I try and upgrade, as much as I can. Beavis says Wilkinson hardware is great, actually, very well made and quite affordable. And Jerry says, then you have to buy a distortion or overdrive pedal, and there are a million different brands and they don't sound the same, so that is a journey. It is a journey, but again, I still think that you're probably better off with a lower gain amp as opposed to simply going straight high gain. High gain is fun. It's a lot of fun to play. I've enjoyed playing right into a high gain amp, but eventually, if you're trying to play more than one style of music, you're kind of stuck at a dead end. And I just wanted to read some of the comments, because there was a couple of comments on the poll question as well. And so Misty Fiona says, nothing beats the sound of pure tone coming straight from the tube amp. I agree. When you have an amp cooking, you have an old Marshall cranked, the gain sounds amazing, beautiful, but there's always a but. If you're playing something else, you're going to be stuck, right? But yeah, I agree. It does sound glorious when you're in the zone. Peter says a programmable amp like a Hughes and Kettner 100 watt, every level of gain at your fingertips with the bread and butter effects. Pedals are too expensive, period. So he prefers to go with an all-in-one solution. And Draw for Real says pedals cost. $. They do. But the advantage is that you get to dial in the specific tone you're looking for. And Alan says, no gain and no pedals will be my choice. As said below, pure tone is pure tone that is down to guitar and amp played clean shows just how good or bad the gear and you are. Anyone could hide behind a wall of distortion. And then we had some answers to that question. So Klaus says, LOL, not really. Sloppy playing is only magnified with more gain. If you suck at string muting, everyone will know it as soon as you start playing with high gain. Then Alan responds to that as a clean-only player, the slightest hint of distortion drives me mad. Just how good or bad I would sound with high gain is not going to happen. And then Klaus says, that's fair that clean tones are your preference, but to insinuate that bad players hide behind a wall of distortion is simply not true. So my thoughts on that, without starting any kind of arguments, just my opinion, guys. My opinion. Take it for what it's worth. I've played both very clean amps and distorted amps, and it's true that you can't. certain amps, not only clean amps, certain amps including amps like some of the Mesas that I've owned in the past, which I don't no longer have, by the way, were kind of difficult to hide behind. You would be able to hear all the mess ups because the string definition was just one of those things where you would hear everything. There's some amps that are a little bit more on the muddy side of things, where you may be able to hide your sloppy playing a little bit more. But it's true, if you're playing strictly through a clean amp, you will hear everything, right? So there's that. But that is a question of like playing technique, style and whatnot. But in terms of usable tones, I still think a cleaner amp, not necessarily 100% clean, but cleaner amp with pedals will get you further along than just a distorted amplifier. And that's my opinion, guys. In the old days, we didn't have the options, so a master volume was cool. Now there is so many cool pedals. Indeed, too many cool pedals. Anderton says they carry like 3,000 different distortion pedals. I don't doubt that. There's a distortion flavor for every day of the week. It's crazy how much stuff is out there, But it's funny because most of us, me included, and probably you guys, probably own, if you look at your pedal collection, the majority of your pedals are probably drive pedals. Am I wrong? Who's with me on that? Because we love drive. We love drive. Unless you already have a totally high gain amplifier, you don't need drive. You probably don't have any drive pedals, or maybe you don't need any, but most of us tend to gravitate towards the drive pedals. Beavis says, I run my amp clean. I get my distortion from a tube-driven pedal. And Surfer By says, I like pole dancers. Always good for a giggle. Okay, so I'm all over the place here today, guys. First of all, I want to say thank you guys all for being here today. It's a pleasure having you guys and being able to entertain you with some chat for an hour or so. It's always my pleasure. Don't worry, we're not finished. We're still going to keep on going. But I just want to say I appreciate you guys being here because I didn't say it yet. All right. The other thing I want to say also is that earlier yesterday or the day before yesterday, we actually hit 27,000 subscribers, which I'm pretty happy with. Still a long way from where I would like to be, but hey, slowly we're getting there. So I want to thank all of you guys that have subscribed to the channel and the new subscribers as well, because there's always new faces here, and I'm happy to see that. So I appreciate you guys being here. Jedi Jingle Maker, say that 5 times fast, says, hey bro, how's it going, dude? Jean-Pierre is still giving us all the Beatles songs and times. Says Full on the Hill 3 minutes. So Jean-Pierre, it's cool, buddy. Jeff says I find 50 wiring sorry, that went by a little too quick. 50 wiring helps cleaning up a gained up amp. It's true. Yes, the wiring does help. It seems, Green Rumor says, it seems to me that most modern amps have both channels clean or drive, so it seemed to be more difficult to find a clean only amp. Not really. I mean, any of the Fender stuff is definitely mostly clean. Even though they're starting to put drive channels on their newer amps, like the Hot Rod Deluxe has the drive, the Supersonic has the drive. But if you go to the earlier versions, the Deluxes, don't usually have the drive. The Twins don't usually have the drives, the Bassman, etc., etc. So if you go with the traditional non-master volume amps, they usually are clean most of the time. Thanks, Gene. I appreciate the congratulations on the 27 subscribers. Very cool. And Beavis says, we appreciate you giving us a place to gather every week. Hey, my pleasure, man. I like to be part of the group as well. Eddie says, Tony, I picked up a made in Japan Wolfgang. Congratulations, Eddie. So you decided to go with the MIJ version instead of the MIM version. So how do you like it so far, Eddie? Is it everything you thought it would be? Fat Philosopher says, swinger party at Tony's house at 30,000 subs. Yeah, let's see if we can get it to work. I'm in. You guys bring the tarp. Ay. Beavis says, hey, Jean-Pierre, you must be Korean. Definitely not a Frenchman. Why do you say that? Jean-Pierre is pure French. Quebecer. So Dan of New Jersey says the gold standard of playing through a slightly breaking up tube amp at home, unless you're using a low wattage amp, i.e. Princeton, really isn't practical. Pedals are the practical option. I tend to think so too. John D says, Tony, your show is perfect because, for example, I subscribe to Philip McKnight, and when he has a live show, the chat has so many people, he goes so fast you can't get a question in. And I try, listen, I'm small potatoes next to Phil. So he's got a lot more people. It's normal. You know what I mean? It tends to happen. But I like having a smaller group because I can actually read your comments, respond to your comments. And it's just one of those things where I feel this is the point of having a live show, is to be able to communicate with your viewers. Otherwise, you're just talking to yourself? What's the fun in that? You know? So, what did I do? I dialed back the tone on this thing. That's why it sounds so dark. Ooh, am I out of tune? Out of tune on this guy. Why? Because I don't really play this guitar enough, and I should. I hate not being in tune. I wish there was a better solution for tuning on guitars, but there isn't. You just have to be patient. I wanted to talk about cabinets for a second because over the last week, I did get some questions that I thought, to me, were kind of a little bit obvious, but maybe to other people, it's not as obvious. So I wanted to share that with you guys. Beavis says, Jean-Pierre, I hope you get the joke and take no offense, none meant. It's a joke. Small potatoes taste better, Wayne says. And Boomer's Black says you have a very positive chat. Thank you, man. That's the goal. So here it goes. Basically, Eddie Jr. says, it seems like Phil McKnight always talks to the same guy every week. Maybe. I don't know. So basically, here we go. The thing I wanted to mention regarding the cabinets. I got a cabinet right here that I made, that I built. And it's a 1x12 cab. You may have seen that video. It's a little old. I'll put the link to that video in the chat. Because it was a little bit old. There you go. You can watch it later on. So that cabinet build was something that I put together myself. And the reason why is because I was trying to build a 1x12 cabinet. And you can buy your own cabinets. They tend to be a little expensive. I wanted to try building my own. So I got a kit from Implicit Audio. And what these guys do is they ship you a box with all of the wood for the cabinet already cut. So all you really have to do is put it together. It's kind of like building a model. It's very simple to do. And I built one. And it's right here. Actually, a lot of people actually asked me after the build, because I never actually showed the final finished product. So I'm going to show it to you guys because some people were asking about it. I put it together. It turned out great, guys. And unfortunately, I'm playing through a multi-effects here today, so I'm not plugged into my amp. Otherwise, I'd make you hear it. The amp is not mic'd up and stuff, so here, let me just grab it. Oy, it's heavy. Yeah, it's heavy, man. Let me just get closer to the mic so I can show you. All right, so this is the finished version of the amp. So it's implicit audio. I put in the Tolex. I got a nice, it was like a hemp. I don't know if it's hemp or basket weave grill. I put in the piping here, and you know, everything like the handle. And I'll show you what I put inside. So basically, I'm running in this particular cabinet. It's a Celestion G12M 65 watt. As you can see, the inside of this thing is great because it's marine grade plywood. It's not the cheap stuff. So this thing will withstand wear and tear. The feet, nice rubber feet on this, you know, metal input jack. 1x12s are great. You can actually even close this up if you wanted to have it completely closed back. I like to have open back just because I feel you get a little bit more of an airy sound out of it. But that's basically it, guys. That's how it turned out. Excuse me. So, you know, is it perfect? No. It's the first amp cabinet that I built from a kit. Obviously, the Tolex came out okay. I didn't put corners on it yet. I figured maybe I'd do that later. I prefer going with the leather corners, but I don't have any, so I just left them off for now. Usually I use this at home anyways, and the reason why I like these 1x12 cabinets is because you can test speakers easily. You know, you can pop in a speaker, pop it out, see how it sounds. If you like it, you can keep it. Otherwise, you can try a different speaker, and it's easy to try speakers where you would normally want to maybe look at a combo amp and see if other speakers sound better. Like, for example, I did a lot of testing with speakers when I was playing the Supersonic. I didn't just take the stock speaker. I ended up taking the stock speaker, changing it, putting some other speakers in there, trying it out, and you basically have more options. And it's easier to sometimes put a speaker in a box like this than having to take it out of a combo, because if there's the tubes get in the way, you can crack a tube and whatever. This is easy. You just put it in there, plug it into the output, and you're good to go, and you can hear what it sounds like. So I tend to do that, but I will make a video talking about how to be sure that your speakers are in phase when you're using a 2x12. A 1x12 is easy because it's one speaker. There's not much. It's not rocket science. But when you're doing a 2x12 or a 4x12 cabinet, you have to make sure everything's in phase and your speakers are wired properly. It's not that difficult, but you could easily mess it up if you're not careful. So I wanted to actually make a video on that and show you how I do it. There's a pretty easy way of doing it, and I wanted to eventually do that for you guys. Jerry says open backs I think sound better. It depends what kind of music you're playing, Jerry, but for the music I play, more classic rock stuff, I think the open backs do sound better. If you're playing something where you need a tighter low end tone, sometimes the closed back are a good choice as well. Yeah, I like the cream back. It's not necessarily my favorite, but it's a good one. Hey, Lion King, nice to see you. The piping is the pièce de résistance. The thing is, this is the thing, this type of Tolex and the grill. I'm just gonna show you this again. You know what, Dan? It's funny because I have an Agnator, and yeah, it does look like the Agnator for real. They use a similar type of a grill. The thing with this grill is that it's thick. It's very thick. So when I ended up putting it on, the front baffle was too tight because they machine all the parts with a CNC machine. So the tolerances are very tight. And so I needed just a little bit more space. So I had to route it out again to give it a little bit more room. So I did that. Then I put the front grill on it. And the trick to getting the grill tight is you want to put it on, staple it on, and wet it. So you use a spray bottle with some water. You just wet it and leave it to dry, and it'll tighten up. So it'll get any of the wrinkles out and stuff. Not a perfect job, but it's pretty good. I'm happy with it. It's good enough. I'd like to eventually put something on it, but I don't have anything with my name on it. It would be cool to have the little Addicted to Gear logo as an emblem there, but I have no clue where I would get something like that made, and it'll probably cost me too much anyway, so I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, Jerry, I put the Tolex on, yeah. It doesn't come with Tolex. It's just the raw pieces. So if you watch the video link that I put in the chat on that, you'll see. You'll see the process. It's just gluing it, pretty much just gluing the pieces together. Goes pretty fast. Surfer By says, so I think I'm going to do a BYO guitar build this winter and use the wood tone finishing kit for the body, maybe film it for YouTube. Why not? Why not? Yeah, do that, man. We would all definitely love to see that. Jerry says 65-watt cream back desert island speaker. You consider that your desert island speaker, Jerry? It's definitely a nice speaker. Davis wants to know what's my favorite speaker. My favorite speaker, I was just talking with somebody regarding this just the other day. It's the old, here, let me show you. It's these. Here, let me just show you. Oh, why did it do that? Sorry, guys. It's funny because I'll tell you a story about these in a second. I'll go to Celestian here. So I'll share this with you guys here so you can see what I'm talking about. This is one of the speakers that I prefer. And let me just share my screen with you guys. Here we go. This guy. It's a Heritage 1265. These speakers, I actually stumbled on them by accident, because I ended up buying the cabinet. You can see all the specs, the frequency response, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how much these are going for now. But basically what they describe them as is originally created in the late 70s using more modern materials and techniques for higher power handling than the the G1265 is widely regarded as one of the best guitar speakers ever produced for use as a 4x12 cabinet. With its fast attack and tightly controlled low end, the G1265 had become a firm favorite with hard rock players by the early 80s. The precisely tuned mid-range and crisp defined top end contributes to an aggressive crunch sound that punches through the mix, while the mid-range warmth and detail give weight and depth to the single notes. So these, let's see, how much do these cost right now? Not really sure how much they are. Does anybody know? Here, let me just go to... okay, I'm looking at the price. Okay, mind you, the new ones are made in China, right? Okay, so I'm looking at the price here in Canadian dollars. Canadian dollars, you're looking at $230 per speaker. That's how much the speakers are going for right now, these ones, okay? But these are they're probably made in China today. So I'll tell you the funny story. So this is how I stumbled on these speakers. I basically ended up looking for a 4x12 cab. The 4x12 cabinet is the one behind me here, and I'll just show you that. I'm just going to the dog cam for a second. That 4x12 cabinet that you see there underneath my Friedman, so that's used, obviously. I bought that a long time ago, used. And I ended up going to some dude's house to pick it up. I didn't know what speakers were in it, neither did he. So I ended up going to the guy's house. I ended up going to his backyard. He had a shed in the backyard where he had this cabinet. And he was selling the cabinets for $400, speakers and everything. So I ended up buying the cabinet. At the time, I didn't really know what was in the cabinet, and I wasn't actually smart enough to actually look or ask. Actually, I did ask, he didn't know. But I was happy enough that there were speakers in there. I had no clue whether or not the speakers were going to be any good. And I bought it with the intention of putting in my own speakers. That was ultimately, I just wanted the cabinet. And I figured for $400, wasn't a bad deal on the cabinet. Anyways, got home, opened it up. Lo and behold, what's in there? 4 G1265 speakers made in England, the original versions. So just the speakers are worth well more than the $400 that I paid for the cabinet. You know, today I don't even think you could get an empty cabinet for $400. So I think that was one of those days where the angels were basically shining their golden light on me, and I just got very lucky. So John, the Marshall that you see on the Friedman is a Studio Vintage. Marshall Studio Vintage 20 watt. One of my favorite Marshalls right now is that one there. The reason why I like that guy so much, this guy right here, I've had other Marshall amps before, quite a few actually, and I've come to realize, and a lot of people will realize this eventually, unfortunately, the hard way. This is why you still see a lot of these amps for sale on the used market. Unless you're playing in a live scenario where you need a lot of volume, the Marshalls, the Plexis, the JCM 800s, a lot of these amps are way too loud for any kind of home use, small club use. They're just too loud. So a lot of people like the tone, that Marshall Plexi tone, but they don't like the volume. And that was the same scenario for me. I had the Plexi, the reissue. I used it with an attenuator, trying to get the sound down for, you know, so that my ears wouldn't be bleeding at the end of the day. It wasn't very convenient. It even had I had another one made for me, which was an awesome Plexi clone. Probably one of the best Plexi clones. Guys, if you ever want to buy yourself a good quality Plexi tone, hand-wired, point-to-point, no circuit board, check out the Rocket Retro stuff. Kevin there makes amazing amps, and they're very affordable. That was a great amp. Just sounded great. I ended up selling it. Even though it sounded great, it was too loud. That greatness came with volume and deafness and tinnitus. So I ended up selling it. So I tried over and over again to find myself a good quality Marshall non-master reverb, not master reverb, non-master. And eventually I realized there's only one way of doing it, is going with a lower gain, lower wattage amp. And I ended up getting the Studio Vintage, and I'm super happy with it. It sounds great. It's a great amp. Like I was saying earlier, you can drive it. It's going to get loud, but you're not going to go totally deaf with it. Still only 20 watts. So for a louder club gig or something like that, it's very usable, and it takes pedals extremely well. You can jumper it like you did the old ones, and you can basically put your pedals in there. It's got an effects loop, and the effects loop is switchable. So if you want to take it out, you can. If you're a purist, you can. And it's not that expensive. You can get these amps used here in Canada, probably about $1,400, which is not crazy money. It's reasonable money. Used, obviously. I got it used, yeah. All right. Let me just scroll back. So going back to the speakers, Presley says probably can get a 3D printed logo for it. I didn't think of that. Yes, you're right. Probably could. I got to look into that. Maybe I will get one. We'll see. Randy says a 2x12 with one open and one closed is cool. Yeah, I don't have that option of like split down the middle, one open and one closed. That cabinet that's down there allows me to remove it has 3 panels in the back. You can remove one of them to get semi-open if you want, which is a good option if you're not sure, right? Cletus says Etsy, and it wouldn't be as expensive as you think. I got to look into it. You're right. You guys have seen, this is why it's good. Power in numbers. Uncle Doug has a great video series on building a cabinet and stretching cloth, adding Tolex, etc. I put the same kind of video in the chat. There's a link in there. I put it earlier on. You can see how I built this one. John says, Tony, in my Marshall combo amp, the speaker in it is a 16 ohm. If I hook up an external speaker, it has 2 options, 8 or 16. What should I use, 8 or 16? So typically, John, if you're going to be doing if you're going to be using only one, right? Because you could disable the internal one. If it's a 16 ohm internal, then you can disable the internal and just use the external, leave it at 16. You would have to check the schematics. I don't want anybody to blow up your speakers. But I think, first of all, even if you happen to accidentally put on 8 ohms or 16, it's not going to be the end of the world. But if you're running both, I think it would be 8, depending on if it's series or parallel. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would just disable the internal one if you want and use the external one. But if you want to go with both, I think it ends up being half. Jean-Pierre says, when I was 15, I took a kitchen drawer and put an 8-inch full-range speaker in it, and it sounded pretty cool. So basically, you did an early Supro kind of mod to your kitchen drawer. That's pretty funny. Antoon says, I really like Jupiter speakers. I haven't seen those. I haven't tried those. Jean-Pierre says, yup, and chose one with the handle on top, easier to carry. That's smart, man. That's an instant cabinet right there. Hey, that's smart. You already have the handle in it and everything. Very cool. I'd love to see a picture of that if you have one. Uh, so Antoon says, yep, these are great speakers. I had one in my Fender EC Tremolux. Randy says, I have a 10-inch closed back cab that's great with my Egnator Tweaker 15. And Dan says, those are the same speakers that came in my 80s era Marshall cab, very heavy. Yeah, that's what I have behind me. I'm pretty sure it's an 80s. You saw it anyways. You saw it earlier. This guy. Yeah, it's pretty. I'm pretty sure it's an 80s cabinet that I have back there as well. John says it's $179.99 US dollars for that speaker. Country of origin, United Kingdom. Okay, so those are the made in the UK still? Good. Yeah, because some of them are made in China now. A lot of drummers going behind plexi. Clubs don't want you to blow out their customers. Yeah, it's true. Too loud. Sold all my stacks, use the deluxe again. If stage gets too big, use monitors. Haven't had metal band for a while, so no need to push air. And Presley says, was looking into ordering chrome logos for my guitar cases with Presley. Looking kind of like the vendor font. If I ordered in bulk, they were going to be around $5 each, which is not that much. Not much, but how many do you need to order to get to $5? Eddie says he's answering Dan. Had an 80s JCM 850 watts, sold it years ago. Great amp. I had one too, Eddie. It was a orange Tolex. Do you remember those? Was it orange or red? No, it was orange. It was more orangey than red. Reddish orange, whatever. I'm slightly colorblind, guys, so. But basically, that was an amazing sounding. It was an amazing sounding head that I had. It was great. Played it in my garage. You had to crank it up so loud, but it sounded glorious. Crack of 3 and the thing was like too loud. So again, had to sell it. Regret it. I would love to have that now. That was one of those things where it's like you would still like to have it even though you could play it only once in a while. So you guys had asked me to report back what I felt about the Fractal FM9 after the rehearsal. So I did a first rehearsal with it last weekend, and it went really well, better than I expected, because I had dialed in the tones here, and it's always a bit of a challenge to get the sound right when you're in a different space. But because I went through my FR speaker, it was already dialed in pretty good, and I really liked what I was hearing. I think it sounded really good. There are a couple of sounds I need to tweak. Some sounds, especially if you go heavy with the reverb and delay, tend to get drowned out in the mix. So those are the ones that you have to dial in. It's hard to dial those in properly because you're alone. So if you're playing alone here, there's nothing really competing with the frequencies. So you dial it in the way you hear it, and it matches the music from the album or song that you're trying to mimic. But then when you bring it into a scenario with a band, that goes out the window, because now you're competing with the bass frequencies from the bassist and the drummer, the other guitarist, the keyboard player, and the singer. So you tend to get buried out. So those are the ones. There's a couple, one or two that I need to tweak a little bit more. And I also wanted to I wanted to shoot a video for you guys that are using a multi-effects unit. It doesn't have to be the Fractal, whichever one you have, on how to go about to dialing in a good usable sound for live situations. How I go about it here. There's a couple of tricks that I use to try and get them to sound, first of all, to sound like an amp, not necessarily a full range speaker, because they're not. That's not necessarily, just because you can do full range doesn't mean you should be doing full range. So that's one thing, how to dial in the sound so it sits in the mix a little bit better. And there's a couple of physical tricks that I want to show you to get that to sound better. And a lot of you might not know this already. So I'm thinking about doing something like that for you guys. What do I feel about the Fractal? I feel that it's great. It's got more than enough juice or power to do whatever you need. I don't see myself running out of flexibility with that unit anytime soon. It's definitely a good alternative to a real amp if you want to have more flexibility at your fingertips. Yeah, it's just a learning curve, guys. As I mentioned, you gotta put the time to master the unit. There's so much you can do with it, so many tricks that things you can do, things that are not obvious and they're not even covered in the manual. And I see people doing these things on YouTube. How they figure it out beats the heck out of me. But they've managed to like squeeze all kinds of functionality out of this thing. So it's, you know, nonstop learning basically. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. Do you still have that cabinet? So Surfer by, are you referring, which cabinet are you referring to? Is that question for me or for someone else? That might be a conversation you're having with someone else. I'm not really sure here. Eddie says, Tony, any advice for fixing fret sprout on stainless steel frets? Yeah, Eddie, look, stainless steel frets are great. They last a lot longer. They're definitely harder, so they're more of a challenge to work out the fret sprout. But it's the same way you would do it on most any guitar. You just basically have to just file them down. And you can use the approach where you can do them individually. I usually use a fret file that's mounted on a block of wood, and I just basically go down the side of the guitar. You can actually feel when your frets are smooth, because it's rough. You hear like a sound when you're hitting those frets, and then it gets quiet, and that's when you know you're level with the edge of the fretboard. And then you take a round over file and you just go at it individually. There's no shortcut, you know. It's not an easy process. It's not fast. My advice though would be to possibly humidify your room, or just control the temperature in your space better if you want to avoid that issue, because oftentimes it happens in the wintertime. Dry climate, heating, not enough humidity in the room, or too much. Usually it's not too much humidity, usually it's not enough. So if you're dealing with a space that's too dry, if you humidify the space where you have your guitars, you tend to have less fret sprout. I don't have the file here, or I would show it to you, but yeah, you could take a file and just epoxy it to a piece of wood. Make sure it's a good quality file, and you can work your way with that. Just be careful not to ruin the edge of your fretboard. Go slow. Yeah. Beavis says, if you run ahead into an FR cab, does it sound similar to an amp sim without an IR, since the frequency range isn't being limited by the speaker? So let me see if I understand this. So head into an FR cabinet, does it sound similar to an amp sim without an IR, since the frequency isn't being limited by the speaker? Okay, so I'm trying to follow the question here. So if you're running your head into an FR cabinet, why would you technically be doing that? Why would you run a head into an FR cabinet? Because an FR cabinet is full frequency, right? So it's not necessarily going to sound good. It'll sound, you know, you'll do, put it this way, when I usually, if I'm going to be using, let's say, a Fractal with a cabinet, so let's say I want to use the Fractal with a head, so I want to get some of the sounds coming from the head and some of the sounds, let's say the effects coming from the Fractal. So you disable the cabinet. Would that make sense? I use it as an effects, like mostly for pedals. So I'll go into a cabinet, but I'll use the Fractal just for effects. And I won't go through the FR speaker. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm answering your question or just confusing matters. Eddie says, Tony, yeah, because the Wolfgang has a raw wood neck, so I was thinking about humidity. Okay, so you're saying that the Wolfgang is not, doesn't have a, the neck is not poly, or there's no finish on the neck. Yeah, those necks tend to be a little bit more finicky with changes in temperature. So it's better to humidify your space if you can. It would be, you would avoid all kinds of issues if you do that. One of the things I wanted to also mention to you guys, if any of you guys are running the NUX MG30, I don't know if anybody is here or not. I have one here. They recently released a new firmware. And I'm happy to see that they're still actively supporting this thing. And it's always good even to see that even with less expensive multi-effects units, you don't just buy it and they kind of like forget about you, and you're stuck with a firmware that's 3 years old without any updates. So they recently released a new one, and what they included in this firmware was the new, what they call the L-Star amp, which stands for Lone Star. So their version of the Lone Star amp is now in the unit, which is a nice sounding amp. I had one, a real one, a while ago. They also improved the tuner and looper by having them be able to remember the last settings. So they say that the MG30 will save the last setup on the tuner or the looper when you quit. So basically you don't have to constantly reset it every time you shut off the unit. And then they also have a new functionality on the knob. So they have a press knob 4 in edit mode to revert to the last saved setting. So if you want to tweak a block, you press knob 4, you can go back to the previous one. So there's little things, not a huge update, but it's nice to know that they are still updating stuff. So I'm getting ready for my Telecaster build, as I mentioned. I think that's going to be coming relatively soon. You will soon see videos popping up on that. The biggest challenge being the shaping of the neck headstock, especially since I don't have a bandsaw. So I'm going to have to do it the hard way, which I'm kind of hesitant to do because I don't want to mess it up. But I'm going to be working on that. We'll see what ends up being the final shape. If it turns out well, maybe it'll be a typical Telecaster shape. If it doesn't, it might be something more of a hybrid shape that just happens by accident. Happy accidents, as Bob Ross used to say. But I'm going to keep you up to date on that and share that information with you guys as well. I'm excited to get started. It's just a question of time as well, right? As far as other things go, man, I think the biggest thing that I have on my agenda right now is just to have a bunch of pedals sitting here. I have a really nice set of pickups that I want to, the P90 pickups that I want to demo for you guys in one of my guitars, which doesn't happen to be in this room. I do need to adjust that that guitar first before I can actually do the demo. I've been talking about this for so long, and I apologize, but it's on my to-do list. I think those pedals are going to be next on the list for you guys. Cause I know you guys love pedal videos and stuff like that. So I'm going to be putting out those pedal videos. The latest news also is that PRS put out the new PRS released the DGTSE. It's a lot of letters. DGTSE, I can't say it fast enough. Guitar, which I mentioned a couple weeks back that was going to happen, came true. And it's actually, you're starting to see videos trickle out on these guitars. Cool guitar. You know, I like the core model GDT. Probably won't be able to get my hands on one of those, but maybe if I'm lucky enough, I can maybe see if I can get the GDT SE. Cool guitar, low output pickups, which is interesting. They didn't go with high output pickups, and the pickups on that guitar, even though it's not a core line model, they seem to be using different pickups than their standard SE lines that they have. So I don't know if they're kind of going with an in-between version of pickups, which is not as generic as the SEs and not as fancy and expensive as the core models, but somewhere in between. If they are doing that, that's cool. So I'd be interested in checking out that guitar. If I do get my hands on it, you can be sure I'll be doing a review on it for you guys. Yeah, Alan, PRS GDT SE model. Yeah. Yes, indeed. A lot of people didn't expect that to actually happen, but it did. And it's under the radar. I don't know. They haven't really made a huge announcement on that yet, but you're going to start seeing them trickle out. Maybe they're just testing the waters to see what the feedback is on that in terms of how people like them. What does the T stand for? Good question. Obviously, the D and the G is for David Grissom. The T, that's a good question. What does the T stand for? Don't know. Does anybody here know? It's a great question. Don't know. How much is the unit? How much is the guitar? Let's see. Let's see how much they're selling them for right off the bat. So, okay, we're not looking at the actual signature model. Or actually, yeah, it's about $849 at Sweetwater. That's not too bad. They have a nice gold top with the moons. Yeah, $800. So sub $1,000. Not bad. I like it. So three knobs on that model. Here, let me share my screen so you don't just have to look at me here. So this is it. Oops, sorry. Let me just scroll for you guys. So this is the price on it, $849. So you can see it there, or $36 a month. So three knobs, as you can see here. Three knobs. That means it's usually it's what is it? 2 tones, 1 volume. This model, it's actually 2 volumes, 1 tone, if I'm not mistaken. Slightly different than you would see on other layouts. And there's Paul. There's the guitar. I believe they're using mahogany on the neck on this one. And I think the body is mahogany and the top is maple ply. So there you go. All right. So you heard it here first, guys, because I think I beat everybody to it. I mentioned it a couple weeks back. I like that. Cletus says T stands for too bad it's not a Les Paul. Exactly. I think that could be it. I was gonna say tremendously expensive, but the SC it's only it's under $1,000, so it's not too bad. If you look at the core model, I think it does stand for tremendously expensive because that's the core model. Just to see how much is the core model of this one here. The core model is about five-ish, about 5,000, I think. Yeah, a lot more expensive. Way, 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 way more expensive. Yeah. Yeah, the knobs are a little bit strange. I'm not a big fan of the knobs, the three knobs, the look of the three knobs. I prefer two. Yep, yep, yep. So Beavis says, at least the PRS GDT SC reads less like my car VIN than the Ibanez models. Yeah, that's true. The Ibanez tend to have a lot of model numbers there. Slightly different. So I'd be interested in trying this out just out of curiosity. I don't know if I'd actually buy one of these, but I'd like to try it just to see. All right, guys, listen, we've been on an hour, 46 minutes. I think we're going to about wrap it up now. What do you guys think? Should we wrap it up, or do you guys have any other questions that are gear related? Maybe if I missed anything earlier on and you're still on the chat, just copy and paste it again. I'll stay on a couple more minutes just to give other people an opportunity to ask gear related questions here. And then we'll wrap it up. You know, thinking back to what I was saying earlier and looking back at the fact that we're losing so many people like Jeff Beck and a bunch of other artists, and I don't think it's going to stop there. I think the next 10 years we'll see even more, unfortunately. The good thing is the silver lining and all of that is, like, if you think, you know, sometimes we forget the big picture. The big picture is this. You know, let me put it this way for you guys. Consider this as time. Okay, time is infinite. So this ruler will just continue forever. Okay, left and right, past, future, infinite. If we look at the millimeters on the scale here, millimeters, let's say that a millimeter is 100 years. Typically, how long a human being can possibly live if they're lucky. A lot of us shorter than that, as we see, reality. So if we look at this and then we look at time as infinite and we're somewhere on the scale as one of these little millimeters, how lucky are we that you and I, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Rod Stewart, Ron Wood, all these great artists are sharing that one little millimeter in time, right? We're basically somewhere here and we're all together. And it goes by so quick. 100 years is not a lot of time. Some people, unfortunately, get a lot less than that. But we're all in it together for such a short blip of time that we're extremely lucky to have the opportunity to have had these artists in our life, to have like made our life even more enjoyable. Because at the end of the day, guys, it goes by real quick. Real quick, you know? So putting it all into perspective like that, you realize you shouldn't be sweating the small stuff. Enjoy the small amount of time that we actually have here together because it's short, you know? At the end of the day, unfortunately, we're gone. It's a cycle. You know, we're here and we're not going to be here. So enjoy it. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, go and play your guitar, do what you wanted to do or that you've been postponing doing. You know, pay the bills later. Enjoy. Go out, buy that thing that you want or spend time with a person that you need to spend time to. Forget about work. Work is always going to be there. It's not the most important thing in the world, okay? There's a lot of things that are way more important than that. So focus on that stuff. Focus on the people that you're here with. Make them happy. Put a smile on their face. And, you know, be happy. Just be happy. Because, yeah, we can always focus on the negative. But at the end of the day, it's just stealing time from you. So that's kind of like the thought of the day that I want to leave you guys with, and hopefully give you something to think about while you're doing stuff today. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. I don't see any other questions. Oh, wait a minute. There is one question here. Presley has a question. Presley says, finishing up a Telecaster build, should I do a square output jack plate or the round barrel? Yeah, good question. So I like the round barrels just because it's Telecasters to me is the round barrel. I don't like the Fender barrel. I like the ones with the 2 screws. I just feel like they work better. But if it's a custom build, you can get away with a really nice square plate. But I like the thicker ones. I don't like the chrome cheapy China versions. You know, if you can get a nice one, a nice thick, maybe aluminum or raw nickel or something thick, that would be cool too. But I think it's really, ultimately, it's your build. It's up to you, man. What are you leaning towards? Stop watching television. All right, guys. I hope that hope you guys enjoyed the show this week. I had a good time. If you guys don't know, we're gonna be here every Sunday. So next Sunday should be here again, God willing. So if you guys are new, put it on your calendar. If this is the first show that you've actually participated in, put it in your calendar, and just make sure you're there because we're gonna have more fun. All right, that's it, guys. Cheers. Have a good week. Talk to you soon. And I'm gonna give you I'm just gonna lead you out with the dog cam. There she is. All right, guys. See you soon.